So Taylor Swift has taken notes from her exes because she's officially ghosting Blake Lively. Speaking of Blake, we've got a new amicus brief from Child USA. In an effort to end child abuse, they're asking the judge to rule in favor of Blake Lively. At this rate, I feel like all of these organizations should come together and form a new coalition and just call it Blake Lives Matter. She must be getting ready for a new settlement because by the end of this, it's going to feel like she was slapped with the Trump tariff. And can we talk about what in the Furby is going on with these troll dolls? Apparently, these overpriced little monsters are called Labubu's, and I have a lot to say about them. But I want to start with it's a Leno for me. It's a big fat Lenoe Jose. And speaking of Lenonos, I just want to know who did this to our pride flag. That's how you know that the gays are no longer running the ship. Because why did we have to add more purple and yellow? Who are we trying to represent here? The Lakers fans? I don't know whoever did this, but can you please tell them to stop in the name of love wins? Sorry, but this is starting to feel a bit like a hate crime, and I ain't here for it. We got a lot to dive into. I hope you're ready for it. Let's get it, baby. Let's get it. You're listening to No Filter with Zack Peter, your go-to source for all the latest pop culture and reality TV tea, served fresh all week long. Now, let's dive in. I see a lot of people dragging Perez Hilton in the live chat, and I think it's because I guess he was trolling Justin Baldoni. We'll get into it. I have a very special guest on the show today who has been following all of this yummy discovery as closely as I have. And then we may have an attorney, Daniel Feruzin, calling in a little bit later to weigh in on Blake dismissing her intentional infliction of emotional distress claims because he's a specialist in sexual harassment claims here in California. So we'll get into that. But first, I wanted to welcome Kristen, aka Colonel Kurtz. How you doing, Kristen?
Hey, what's up? Hi, everybody. Well, I love to be on this show. It's my second time on, and this time it's just me. So thank you. I feel honored. But I want to know what the attorney says too, because I have been in basically a hole for the last. It's not the K hole like Elon Musk, but I have been in a hole for the last 4 or 5 days working on this amicus brief. And as I said earlier on Twitter, next time I brag about doing a legal brief, someone needs to step in and stop me. Because what's funny is I wrote up sort of a draft of my thoughts and everything. I thought it sounded good. And then somewhere around like Saturday night, I really took a deeper look at the other amicus briefs. And of course, we know they have big issues and they're silly. But I realized, I was like, girl, I'm going to have to go a lot deeper with this and get more case and study up, learn more case law and just go all the way with this to make it look like it needs to look. So anyway, I got in way over my head, but I have learned a lot. You know, I realized I didn't even really understand anti-SLAPP statutes. And so I feel like going forward, this can be really helpful to me in some of the different cases that we're looking at. But as far as what seems to have happened with the Blake Lively stuff the last several days, tell me if I'm wrong on this. What I'm getting here is that she basically she does not want her medical records and all these other embarrassing things, therapist notes, embarrassing things out there. So she's basically retreated from her emotional distress claims,
Yeah.
but she also wants the freedom to be able to bring those claims and that evidence again at a later date, right? And so that's why there's this discussion about whether they're going to be whether these things are going to be dismissed or withdrawn with prejudice or without, right? Is that basically what's going on?
Yeah. So Baldoni's team, they're saying, hey, if you're emotionally distressed, give us the medical records. As we know, she was fighting for her attorney's eyes only protection for these medical records. So she was anticipating, or at least pretending that she was, anticipating that they were going to have to come out at some point. Now that it's time for her to fork them over, because now we're into discovery and the judge still hasn't dismissed her from the lawsuit. Now, shit's getting real and she's having to turn these medical records over. She doesn't want to. So she says that she will withdraw she has 2 claims of emotional distress. One is intentional and one is negligent. And so she's claiming that Baldoni was intentionally trying to hurt her, and then he also did so negligently, or at least Wayfair did, with their retaliatory actions towards her. She's still moving forward with her harassment claims and her retaliation claims, but the emotional distress claims she's dropping, and she, like you said, wants to get them dropped without prejudice so that
Right.
she can bring them forward moving forward. Wayfair argued, and they were like, well, she can't have it both ways. She can't,
Right.
you want to drop them and then, have the potential to bring them back down the line. That's not fair. The judge basically told them, figure it out, but made it clear to Lively that should these claims move forward, that she will have to turn over her medical records.
Well, these things, like medical records, these would still be protected from the public's eyes, right?
Correct.
Right, right.
Yeah,
But
because she has the attorney's eyes order, the attorney's eyes only order that protects them from, so Baldoni won't even see them. And so that's where I
Mhm,
see people online and they're just like,
mhm.
oh, well, of course she's going to want to protect her medical records from her abuser. But it's like, but one, he's an alleged abuser, number
Mhm.
one. And number two, he will never have access to them because the judge has already ordered that these documents are under seal. The public will never see them. They won't come out during trial. I mean, they may be referenced during the trial, but we won't actually see these records come forward. Now, again, emotional distress, I compared it to like a car accident. When you are when you're physically harmed in a car accident, you have to provide your medical records. You waive the right to privacy, and you have to provide those medical records because then you have to prove that there were actual injuries inflicted. And so in this case, there would have to be, maybe a psychiatric evaluation, therapy notes, something that proves that she was emotionally distressed. And
Right. We
I
need
would,
proof. We
yeah,
need proof.
evidence.
Yeah, and of course, people like Blake Lively in her position, it's the same with Amber Heard. They will try to argue that, this is an invasion of their privacy and they shouldn't have
Yeah.
to do this, et cetera, et cetera. And if this were a case where Blake Lively was actually the innocent party, or with the Depp versus Heard thing, if Amber Heard had been the innocent party, then yeah, I'd have a lot more sympathy for that. And that's how I feel honestly about a number of these things that have been under contention for the past several months with this case. For example, with the whole debate around anti-SLAPP and AB 933 and these statutes, the argument that the other side makes is that we don't want to have a chilling effect on the speech of survivors of sexual assault or sexual
Right.
harassment and also with anti-SLAPP, we don't want to have a chilling effect in situations where perhaps whistleblowers might want to come forward and blow the whistle on unethical workplace practices. We even have environmental groups saying that we need this anti-SLAPP rulings and we need them to go further, even further, to protect people who might be speaking out against powerful corporations. Yes, always in these cases, unfortunately, there are going to be innocent people who are going to be harmed. And so I hate the idea as much as
Yeah.
anyone of people who have really been victims of sexual assaults or real sexual harassment. I mentioned the other day on a stream, Charlize Theron's North Country. If anyone has ever seen that movie, it's about one of the groundbreaking sexual harassment cases. She played the part of a woman who was a coal miner. This has really happened. Coal miner decades ago brought a lawsuit against where the place where she was working because there was really severe harassment. You look back at those kinds of things and then you see what people like Blake allege. It's ridiculous. But yes, I have tons of sympathy for people who have been real victims. The problem is that we see with this current situation, we saw it with Johnny Depp, we see with other cases, is that there are a lot of liars who have now jumped in to take advantage of the Me Too moment, and
Mm-hmm.
they are hiding behind these anti-SLAPP statutes and various other more extensive statutes now, such as we see with California. They're hiding behind these, and we can't have that. So
No, we can't have that. And it just feels like they're weaponizing these laws that are supposed to be put in place to protect real victims, real
right.
survivors, you know. And when you have people like Amber Heard or Blake Lively, I mean, even like a Jussie Smollett, when they come and they manipulate the media and they play these games and try to pull on the heartstrings of people, all it does is make things worse. Like, if anything, Blake Lively sending the Me Too movement into oblivion because it's
Yes.
completely taking away from the people that actually need these. Her medical records, and I'm so glad that Variety actually clocked it. They covered her withdraw, and they were like, they specifically said it was unusual for someone in Blake Lively's position to do something like this because they say even though discovery is uncomfortable,
Mhm.
handing over your medical records in a case like this is inevitable. And I
It's
was really
standard.
happy to
I
see,
know.
yeah, I was really happy to see Variety actually admit that because I'm like, what? You guys have been protecting her for so long. But now you're starting to see it. Like now it's making sense.
No, it's true, and look, I feel sorry for legitimate victims that Blake Lively is going to be a precedent-setting case for them, and even though I actually think it's a good thing because it's exposing to lots of people in our world how these anti-SLAPP statutes and these other more extensive statutes are being abused by liars and by, false accusers, but I do feel sorry for all the legitimate victims that Blake Lively is the standard bearer for this kind of precedent setting, these kinds of precedent setting rulings, such as Judge Lyman is having to look at now with the anti-SLAPP stuff. But it is what it is, and like you're saying with the medical records, this is standard stuff, and she should have known. Again, this gets back to the question of who has been advising Blake Lively this whole time. Are her attorneys really that bad? She should have known when she initiated this chain of events, this domino roll, so to speak, that it was going to come to this, that if Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer ever fought back, that she was going to be in a legal battle. And yes, things like medical records, that's just de rigueur. That's just normal. You have to show
Well,
those.
I think that's where, the argument comes back that it looks like she really wasn't like expecting this to go the way that it did. I think she was expecting Baldoni to bend over, take his beating accordingly, and she was just going to walk away from all of this. And so it's interesting because it's like how do you come out of this without looking horrible? I saw Pierce Morgan. He tweeted yesterday and he was just like, somebody needs to advise her to stop this because she's a laughing stock globally now. People all
She
around the
is.
world are watching this and they don't see her as a victim. They see her as a joke at this point. And it's like, I don't know who's advising her. But the interesting thing is her attorneys came out in a statement to the press and they doubled down on that in their court filings that this decision to drop the emotional distress claims is their way of streamlining and focusing her lawsuit. And so with those terms, I now see all the Blake bots on threads and they're coming out and they're just like, oh, well, yeah, she's streamlining her lawsuit because she's focusing on the real important pieces. And I'm like, but hello, a lawsuit, like damages is really important in a lawsuit, right? You have to sue for damages. And what's the best way to prove your damages is to prove your claims of emotional distress.
Right.
But again, all the Blake bots, their argument is, well, it's really hard to prove emotional distress. Actually, it's not. You just need your medical records
Not in
and
a
you need to be
court,
willing to submit
no.
them.
Yeah, it's not, and a lot of people in all kinds of civil actions have successfully proven emotional distress.
Yep, I agree. Now we did get yet another new Amicus brief. I know you're a pro with these
I
Amicus
like it.
briefs.
Well, I like it too because it keeps lowering the standard. This thing was, structurally, it looks good. It's doing everything it's supposed to do in terms of the components. But it's the same thing that I felt when I looked at Elise's amicus, which
Yeah.
is like you actually get into it, and it's like, are these people not embarrassed to be presenting some of this before before the
Well,
community?
let's look at this one. So this one comes from Child USA, and Child USA is an interdisciplinary nonprofit think tank. I don't know what that means. It's a nonprofit think tank that's dedicated to preventing child abuse and neglect and ensuring access to justice for survivors. Child USA's mission is to employ in-depth legal analysis and cutting-edge social science research to come up with the best policies needed to increase child protection and the common good. So, I mean, to me, I don't really know what they do. They seem very well intentioned. I love that they're using social science research, cutting edge social science research, but I don't know how their word holds any weight. How their think tank to prevent child abuse is in any way connected to Blake Lively.
Well, and
Thoughts?
let me just say, since you brought up the social science research, so one of the points that I make, I don't hold myself up as an expert on these things, but I have taken and taught a number of gender theory classes in my time in my prior life as an academic, and one of the points that I make in my own brief is that these these social science questions, as you put it, these things are very complicated, and just it's very easy to find sources backing up whatever your perspective is. So yes, some of these groups can give us a list of sources saying this and this and this, but then it's very easy to find a very credible group of sources arguing the opposite thing, right? And so one of the things that we can get into this later, but I really push back on is the idea that only a tiny percentage of claims are false, claims of sexual assault or sexual harassment. There is a wide range when you look at the studies, a wide range of conclusions that various studies come to. One, a study as high as 90%. You get a lot of them in the 30, 40, 50 range, and then a lot in the 10% range. So it's really, I'm getting tired of seeing people, particularly in some of these briefs, claiming that only 1% of assault or harassment allegations are false. We don't have the conclusive data for that. We just don't. So anyway, go ahead though. I'm sorry.
No, but again, it's because there are a number of these cases like Blake Lively's where a lot of times, had this not had the internet, its interest, had this not had the press coverage that it has, she would have gotten away with this. If this were just, or I mean, look at Elise
Mm-hmm.
Dorsey, right? Ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
she ended up having to settle in her case. But I mean, come on, she can
Mm-hmm.
very easily, say she made those allegations against him. She filed that complaint, and was there any follow up to find out if those, allegations were true or not true and the validity of them? But she kind of got away with it. I mean,
Right.
ultimately she ended up settling, but
But
it's just
settling
it's
after, yeah, they settle, but then the generally speaking, the accused, which generally is a man, the accused is left with his reputation in tatters, and then
yeah.
even after that, you still have the accuser hanging on, as you can see here, for years after the fact. She's still trying to ruin him. Elise
Yeah.
Dorsey's still trying to ruin this dude, and when you look into the case, it really looks like hers was another false claim. But anyway.
It's crazy because they were in a relationship for 12 or 11 years, and she not only was his student, yes, but she also electively chose to work with him 2 other times afterwards.
Yep.
So clearly, I mean, listen, I understand the argument of Stockholm syndrome, but she had periods and breaks away from this man and continued to then go and work for him because it benefited her financial interest. It benefited her career.
Right.
I mean, it's also like Harvey Weinstein. Again, deplorable men, very poor character, did a number of disgraceful things, but there were also a number of women that were electively choosing to sleep with Harvey Weinstein to advance their acting careers. He wasn't taking advantage of everyone, and the unfortunate part is these very disgraceful, disgusting men who are doing these sleazy things then kind of get a pass to a degree, because then these women end up putting forth these false claims against them, and then it just ends up muddying the waters for everybody, when it's like there are real predators and there's real predatory behavior that happens every day, that cases like this. And I don't even know if, I mean, is it like, you know is it delusion? Like, because Elise Dorsey really seems to believe that she's a victim in this.
Well, I think it's two things. Having looked at these types of cases a lot, and I see your super chat too, but just real quickly, I think that what you have certain personality types, and there's research, by the way, social science research showing this, that certain disturbed personality types or even cluster B personality types tend toward false allegations. That is actually a common manifestation of their psychiatric problems. And I think that what you have is that when you have a problematic personality type, like I think Elise Dorsey or Amber Heard or any of these others, right? And then you have this person now who in the past, they would not be supported by their community in their false claims. But now, because of Me Too and because of all of this problematic social science research, yes, about coercive control, I'm not denying that every aspect of the coercive control paradigm is wrong, but there's a lot of bullshit in that. And you've got all
Yeah.
these people now who are supposedly educated. And this is where I get back to talking about my own background in academia. You have a lot of people who consider themselves to be highly educated who are actually spouting bullshit, because there's a whole cottage industry in academia that has grown up around these problematic ideas. And so one of them, as you just mentioned, being that you cannot claim, on the one hand, that you were assaulted, terrorized, harassed, whatever, by this person, but then you keep going back to this person for favors, for job opportunities, for employment. It just, and Bill Maher pointed this out in his monologue about the Diddy situation. I know we're not on that right now, and no one's denying that that Sean Combs did horrible things, and
Yeah.
that he deserves some kind of punishment. I think he deserves some punishment for assault and battery, but at the same time, and this is what Bill Maher pointed out, we are now to the point, ladies, where you have support in society. You have society on your side. You cannot keep going back to these men for favors, for money, for career help, yes, for sex, and for years and years and years, and claim that you were completely incapacitated. I understand how the abuse cycle works. I've known people who were in it, but that is just bullshit. Sorry.
Yeah, there was a no, I'm glad you brought that up because there was a comment that came in on YouTube. I wonder if I can find it, but there was a comment that came up on YouTube from this one woman, and I responded to it because it was just such a preposterous claim to me. Let me see if I can.
About the Baldoni thing, or about the Sean Combs Diddy
I
thing?
don't remember if it
Oh,
was
okay.
about Baldoni or Elise Dorsey. It was about something about claims. Oh, I think it was about Elise Dorsey, and I want to say that the comment was basically saying that um I'm gonna find
You're
it. I'm
fine. Take your
determined
time.
now.
It's how a stream
Uh,
goes.
I know. I am going to find it because I remember
People don't.
responding to it, and it to me it was just so um like disrespectful to women because they basically the argument that they were basically trying to make is that even if Elise Dorsey did consent, she was in an unfair power dynamic,
Yep.
and so it was still very coercive of them to have this relationship, and it doesn't matter if she had an 11-year affair with him after they first hooked up in college because she was young and impressionable. And I'm like, well, at what point does a woman have autonomy over her life, right?
It's
Like, at
very
what point is she
unfeminist.
allowed? Yeah.
And no, it's
And
not.
that's
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, it is. It's very unfeminist, and something that, and this again is where I was able to bring some of my background into this when I was writing about these situations, is that um, classical traditional feminism from long time ago, it wanted to get away from this idea of the woman as this innocent, wide-eyed, delicate thing that, like in my, look, let me tell you a story. When my mom was in college, she had to be at her dorm by 11 p.m. every night, or they would call her fucking parents and say, your daughter, and this wasn't some weird religious dorm, this was just a normal standard university dorm. If she was not in her room by 11 o'clock, they would call her parents and say, your daughter is not here. So she would get in trouble, because it used to be understood that women could not be trusted to be out late at night, young women. And this is something I grew up with in the Baptist church, the idea that women are these delicate virginal things and men are these predators, and we've got to separate them and all. And I hated it. And that is what feminism was trying to get away from. And now what we have are women like Blake Lively spreading the notion that a grown woman, we're not even talking about a young woman, I'm sorry, Blake, you're middle aged, that a grown, near middle aged woman could not handle some basic human interactions without screaming sexual harassment. It's terrible. What the message it sends is women do not belong in the workplace.
Yeah. I mean, and not only that, but like, look at how much this ruins Blake's career because it shows how litigious she is,
Yep.
suing not just a fellow actor, like he's not just the lead actor, he's the director and he's the head of the production company that was producing this film. That it's like it goes to show nobody's safe on the set. So I don't know how anybody would want to employ her moving
Who
forward
would
because
want to work
it
with
doesn't look
her?
like she can be trusted in that way. But
No.
but not okay. So here's the comment. I found it by Morning Glory 555, and they edited the comment, but let's see if this is what it originally said. It said that is sexual harassment related to Elise Dorsey's case. That is sexual harassment. Professors have no business seducing their undergrad students, plain and simple. That's why schools bar faculty student relationships. Whether she consented with him does not matter. It's inherently coercive. And I said, that logic is literally insane and demeaning to women. You're basically saying that even as a grown adult woman, that if she gives consent, she's too dumb or naive to give it properly. So even if she agrees with her own free will, it's inherently coercive. And I also said that the university does advise that the students not sleep with their professors and vice versa, but it's not against the rules. They're just required to report it.
Yeah,
Um,
so this is something, again, I could speak to, having had sex with many of my students. No, I'm joking, but, having been in academia, and I have seen situations where, people I knew, acquaintances or friends, did get into relationships with their professors, or even I've known of a few with their students. Again, I'm not saying these are good things, but university policies differ widely. But I can tell you that when Elise was in a relationship with this man, the policies were not nearly as strict as they are now. With Me Too and with everything else, and the infantilization of young people, the policies have become more strict. But let me just say that I have known of a lot of teacher-student relationships, romantic relationships over the years. Some of them undergrad, but most of them grad students. And I have never known of a case where you had some wide-eyed student that was just basically entrapped into this situation. Generally speaking, as I understand it, the students were the initiators or raring to go. So I think that, again, this is a vision of womanhood that sees women as non-sexual beings, having no sexual agency, no sexual or romantic desire. She's just there innocently. She's just working on her term paper, and this lecherous prof just came along and he just seduced her. I just reject it. It's just bullshit. And why the hell this should even matter to this case with Blake Lively? She wasn't anyone's student. So it doesn't even have any pertinence. All that amicus brief was by Elise was an effort to get her story out there, because she has a cluster B personality disorder, I would imagine. I don't know, but I would imagine. And she wants attention, and she hasn't gotten enough of it. So she sees the Blake Lively Baldoni thing as a big cultural flashpoint. And she's like, oh, well, I can get my story out there. So that's why most of her brief is a lot of bullshit about her own psychosocial issues.
Yep. It really is. And it's crazy because then, people, because then the unfortunate part is then people like you and I who discuss these things and who bring the context to light are then seen as misogynists. We're seen as anti-women. We're seen as people that want to abolish Me Too. When it's like, again, I feel like these social justice movements, not that there isn't some merit to the cause itself, but the coalition ultimately ends up just doing the opposite effect at the end of the day. And you do have these women that weaponize this, and it's unfortunate. I want to be the biggest champion of women. Like, if anything, I have more daddy issues than I do mommy issues. Like, I can go off on men all day. However, that to me, there's right and there's wrong, and in these cases, it's not right what some of these women are doing.
Right.
Okay, but being that we often get positioned as women haters and men apologists, I want to talk about Diddy. I want to talk about Taylor Swift, and I want to talk about Diddy, which we'll get into both in just a sec. But really quickly, I did want to give a quick shout out to this week's sponsor, because I love me some out of office gummies. Are you sick of drinking your calories or of waking up hungover? Having some drinks can be fun, but I'm glad that I found an alternative that lets me feel great in the moment and the next morning, and that's my out of office gummies from Soul. Soul is a wellness brand that believes feeling good should be fun and easy. Soul specializes in delicious hemp-derived THC and CBD products designed to boost your mood and help you unwind. Their best-selling out-of-office gummies were designed to provide a mild, relaxing buzz, boost your mood, and enhance creativity and relaxation. And if you like their out-of-office gummies, you've got to try their new out-of-office beverages. It's a refreshing, alcohol-free alternative, perfect for summer sipping. Plus, Soul has so many other amazing wellness products with or without THC, including a variety of gummies and capsules that can improve stress, pain, sleep, focus, bloating, and more. Bring on the good vibes and treat yourself to Soul today. Right now, Soul is offering my audience 30% off your entire order. Go to getsoul.com. That's GETSOUL, getsoul.com, and use code NOFILTER. That's getsoul.com. Promo code NOFILTER for 30% off. Go and get it. Also, if you didn't notice, I am wearing my new Never With Teeth t-shirt from the new merch line from now until June 15th. My birthday is on June 15th, and I'm running a new charity campaign in honor of Home Life Community. Home Life Community is an organization that's helping to fight the housing crisis for people with autism, which is continuing to grow. As you know, my brother's 22 or 23, and he's aged out of the school system. And unfortunately, for many people on the autism spectrum, where they're going to live in the future, if and when their parents pass away, is a sad reality for a lot of families. Luckily, my family has the luxury of siblings and other family members that can care for Ethan, but there are a number of families that don't have that luxury. And unfortunately, they need a place to go. So I'm glad that I have Home Life Community, founded by Dr. Jerry Kartsnell, who's my brother Ethan's doctor. I'm glad that he's out here to help solve this crisis for nonverbal individuals with autism. And it's not just people on the autism spectrum, it's people with other neurological and physical disorders. So you can go right now to No Filter merch and you can stock up on all the different shirts. Like I said, right now I'm wearing my Never With Teeth t-shirt. We also have Zack Peters, my lawyer. Call 1-800-SO-YUMMY. We have Do I Look Like I Just Fell Out of a Coconut Tree? We have Justice for Justin. We have Zacktivated tank tops, Zack pack hoodies, whatever floats your boat, you can get it. And if your purchase is made before June 15th or by June 15th, I will donate 50% of all of my proceeds to Home Life Community. So head on over, stock up now, get your merch, guys, get your merch. All right, let's talk about Taylor Swift. So, new report came out in the Daily Mail that Taylor Swift has ghosted Blake Lively, that Blake's been emailing her and calling her and texting her, and Taylor has no interest in talking to her.
Why would she at this point?
I mean, right?
So I do trust, I don't know how you feel about this. I do trust the Daily Mail sources that we've been getting on the Blake Lively stuff. I think that actually, in my experience, and I've actually known a couple of celebrities that use the Daily Mail as an outlet at times for getting their perspective out there. I actually do think that when the Daily Mail says they have a source, then they believe they have a verified source close to someone. So I'm not saying that everything that they say is true, but they have a source clearly who's hooked in somewhere with Blake or Taylor, and I would assume Taylor's camp. And they're receiving this information that Blake is blowing up Taylor's phone and socials and stuff. So Blake, her problem is that she has way too much belief in her own powers to persuade and her own charm and her own ability to seduce. And I think that's part of what's gotten her into this situation. Is she's just been used to her entire life just charming people. And when that doesn't work, then you apply the Blake Lively pressure and you threaten.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's already threatened Taylor Swift, as we know.
Yep. Paula M is saying, can Blake No Teeth go to jail for lying? I mean, that's only if criminal charges are filed against her.
Yeah,
It's
we're not gonna do
unlikely that
that.
that's going to happen. Yeah, Blake won't be facing any criminal charges, unfortunately. CJ Ward says, did BL's recent Blake Lively's filing state to pursue other emotional distress, to pursue massive additional compensatory damages? If so, her attorneys are putting it out there that she's looking for money. I believe that was part of their statement. Is they said that they were okay losing the emotional distress claims because they're going to fight for compensatory damages, not actual damages. But again, like her whole case is just so weird to me because, I mean, arguably, they're probably trying to protect Brian Friedman from bringing in the fact that she's been doing SNL and walking red carpets and did Time 100. Like, that's not the face of a woman who's been emotionally distressed. I mean, she said that her and her children were traumatized by this.
I would assume she has no evidence of emotional distress, actually. Now, I believe that the woman has distress at the way that her case has fallen apart and the way that she's been completely ruined in the media in the last and in the public mind in the last several months, but that's nothing to do with her original claims of workplace harassment and stuff. So I would imagine that she has no proof of any kind of emotional distress.
Listen, I think her medical records either don't exist, right? Like she didn't see a therapist. She has no proof of her emotional distress, or she doesn't want to turn over any of those notes. Cause I mean, they're very likely maybe something that exposes her own relationship. There may be something that, I mean, I know people have speculated that maybe she had feelings for Baldoni. Like that could be something that she talks about in therapy, not thinking that this would ever come out, but telling her therapist, I have the hots for Baldoni and Ryan's coming on the set and this is what's stressing me out. Or maybe she can say that Ryan was the source of her stress. There's something in those therapy notes that once her attorneys reviewed the medical records, they knew that there was something they had to protect.
I had a thought too about CJ's super chat question. I wondered, and again, I'm not a lawyer, right, as I've said, but I wonder too if that was almost if that statement about, well, she might pursue additional compensatory damages. I wondered if that was almost kind of a cop out, as if to say, I'm not really running away from this, or I'm not really totally withdrawing my emotional distress claims, like almost as if to say, like, I might be doing this for money. I might be doing, in other words, like I'm withdrawing this because I'm expecting I'm going to get other compensatory damages or something, as a way of almost kind of saving face. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your lawyer friend, if he comes on or she comes on, explain it.
Yeah, I just texted him to see if he's able to still make it this morning. But yeah, it'll be interesting. But listen, I would imagine Taylor Swift wants nothing to do with her. Taylor's like, screw you. I don't want to talk to you. Don't text me. I mean, I'm sure Blake's freaking out too, because, and she's probably, as I feel like Blake does often, using the sympathy card about like, well, but you're my kids and you're their godmother and we love you. And, I hope we can move past this. Like, I wonder how that feels for Blake to know that like one of her closest friends and allies wants nothing to do with her and basically can see that this whole lawsuit is a farce.
I mean, I think it's hard to know how much denial Blake Lively's in, but I think it probably feels to her like her entire world has collapsed, which, I mean, it has, and again, I would have sympathy for that if she had not A, caused it, and B, if she were not persisting in this direction. Also, CJ had a good point here that when talking about extra compensation, Blake Lively might have been referring to 47.1. That was again the statute that came from the AB 933 that everybody's been submitting amicus curiae about. But one of the things that 47.1, as a lot of you know, does provide for is treble damages.
Yeah.
If the judge does choose to go, and again, that's what these amicus curiae briefs are partly about, right? Is the judge going to go according to 47.1? But if the judge were to apply that, and if the judge were to dismiss Baldoni's allegations or whatever, then then Blake might end up getting treble damages later on. I think that's the point you're making, right, CJ? I really don't like the treble damages clause in this
Yeah.
new anti-SLAPP legislation and statute 47.1, because I've seen cases personally, and I'll bring this up again, the Marilyn Manson case, for instance, which people don't have to agree with me on that or not, but I've seen cases like this where I'm absolutely convinced that the man who's accused is innocent of what he's accused of. And moreover, that this person has provided extensive evidence of this. And yet the judge, I think due to her own biases and also the extremely high standard, crazily high standard that anti-SLAPP imposes on these cases, for these reasons, she ended up dismissing Manson's defamation claims. And what that then does, according to 47.1, is it means that he has to pay treble damages in that situation. Now, this doesn't apply to Manson because this was after that was adjudicated. But I'm just saying that I know that there are cases where these really high standards in 47.1 or even the anti-SLAPP standards are preventing men who have been falsely accused from getting justice, and now could impose treble damages on them, where they're not only not getting justice, but now they're having to fork out way more money to their false accusers. It's just a sad situation. But
Well, it's interesting that they're fighting for compensatory damages, because my understanding of compensatory damages are their actual damages, their actual losses that they have to prove in court. That like that would be, her business failing, that would be her losing a movie as a result of this, but then they would have to actually prove that it was a result of Baldoni's smear campaign. I guess maybe that's why they're claiming the smear campaign is still going on to this day, because anything that hurts her reputation now they can blame on Baldoni. But it's interesting that they're fighting for the compensatory damages versus the punitive damages. And then I agree with you regarding treble damages. And so just so people understand, compensatory damages are actual damages, right? Medical bills, if you lost a contract, like those are actual like monetary damages that you can prove, right? Like if you had a contract to promote, Sugar Bear hair gummies and it was $10,000 and then they canceled your Sugar Bear hair deal, and then
or if you had a terrible hair care line that plummeted in popularity.
Yeah. And treble damages are where the court will give the plaintiff 3 times the amount of what the actual damages are, and that ultimately gets determined by the jury, but it basically they triple the money that they believe you're entitled to, which is
Well,
wild.
and CJ pointed out here, and this is true, with no discovery, meaning that what 47.1 and even the anti-SLAPP statutes pre-existing it, what they do is they allow for, they force the judge basically at a certain point early on in things to make a ruling as to the case basically, and without discovery. So the idea is you're trying to protect women in general. It is women, right? You're trying to protect those who have been accused of defamation. You're trying to protect them from having to go through discovery if it's an illegitimate claim. In other words, if these men really weren't falsely accused and they're just punishing these women with this frivolous tort action, right? And so the idea was that you halt this thing before discovery so that these women are having to go through all of the trauma of having their life basically rummaged through and exposed. But what that also does is it prevents those who are claiming defamation from getting the discovery that they need to prove their case. So to me, this one of the reasons why this legislation is problematic is that we get into this weird cycle here where you're telling the man or you're telling the claimant, the defamation claimant, we're not going to give you the discovery that you need to prove your case, and then we're going to rule against you because you don't have enough to prove your case, and then we're going to apply treble damages onto you because of that. I mean, I'm somewhat simplifying it, but that is the danger here with some of this.
Do you think it was because they feel like there were these powerful men that were abusing women for so many years in the workplace, so in an effort to even the playing field, they had to come out swinging with, you know
I think that is, yeah, I think that is the rationale. I'll also say this, Zach, I didn't realize until I started looking into this stuff this weekend that the anti-SLAPP laws and some of these other rules, the anti-SLAPP in particular laws extend to way more than just sexual assaults and sexual harassment cases. So like I was talking about earlier, whistleblowers, people that come forward in good conscience to accuse corporations of malfeasance, people who come forward to accuse politicians of malfeasance and stuff. So I think part of the problem that we're finding here with the anti-SLAPP laws is that they did not take into account how Me Too would unleash a tidal wave of false accusers who would then be able to hide behind these anti-SLAPP laws. Now, as far as 47.1, that is more specifically tailored to sexual assault and sexual harassment. But I'm just saying in general, this whole wave of like anti-SLAPP legislation, it seems to be about a lot more than just the sexual cases. But unfortunately, this is where we see this really significant problem with false claims, is that you have a lot of women with the Me Too movement now who are falsely accusing men. And I also think that it rests also on the false supposition that most Me Too claims are legit and that most defamation claims are non-legit. And what I argue, for instance, in my amicus brief, is that I don't think we can assume that most defamation claims are non-legit, that in fact, defamation claims might be a good way of sifting who's telling the truth from who is not, because I actually believe that most defamation claims are legitimate. And so what we're seeing here is that of Me Too claims, there's a subset that are false, and those can be addressed by defamation claims, by defamation lawsuits. But unfortunately, the feminists don't agree with me, and the law seems to be moving in the opposite direction, where it denies that there are a lot of legitimate defamation claims. And so basically what 47.1 does and what these anti-SLAPP rules does is it handcuffs people who are seeking defamation claims.
I mean, it's kind of no different from like the ambulance chasers, right?
Right.
You get hit, you get into a car accident, oh, my neck, my back, this and that. And then you go to a doctor and you tell them all these things that are wrong. They write you a note, they give you, and they're going to drive up whatever the medical bills are because they're going to get paid out that money eventually. And it's ultimately just going to end up helping those ambulance chasers get the money that they want from these
Right.
accidents that they're probably exaggerating. So it's not a far stretch to think that these things do happen and people do stretch these things, because at
Right.
the end of the day, what happens at the end of a lawsuit? A payment, a settlement, money, and
Right.
that's the biggest motivating driver. I'm not saying that that's always the case,
Right.
especially
No, it
when it
is.
comes to these assaults, but that is a very real reality. And when people are driven by money, when that's their motivator, it can get into really dangerous territory.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think that lawyers are such a huge part of this problem. Pretend we and also we cannot pretend that these high-profile celebrity cases are indicative of the experiences of normal people. That's another, I think, flaw with the thinking on that I've seen in these amicus briefs so far is they keep saying Blake Lively's not your average woman. She actually has so many more resources. Your average woman is even more beaten down and needs this kind of help. Well, the argument works the other way too. If Blake Lively is not a normal woman, why are we taking her case as being indicative of the experience of normal women? In other words, I don't think Blake Lively needs these 47.1 or anti-SLAPP protections because I don't think that she's indicative of your average woman who is experiencing harassment or sexual assault.
I agree. Let's talk Diddy. So Diddy trial's going on. I know you've gotten a lot of flack on X for your takes on the case, which I have to admit, as much as I hate to say it, I agree. Not I don't hate that I agree with you. I hate
No,
that
I know what you mean.
I hate that our position in this case is
We don't
that
want to
people
support Diddy. We're not Diddy
yeah,
supporters, right?
exactly. I hate that that's the perception that's being made. And then I see tweets about like, oh, well, of course the pro Baldoni people are going to be
I
pro Diddy. And
know.
I'm like,
I
I'm not
know.
pro Diddy. But I don't think that the prosecution, from what we've seen, is made as strong of a case as the defense is doing right now. From what we've seen, they completely, in my opinion, annihilated Cassie, and my heart breaks for Cassie. I think that obviously we saw the video and we saw that he did physically harm her, but then we also see the text messages that were presented that show that she was very complicit in the freak offs and she was asking to participate in the freak offs. And when she talks about the alleged substance abuse, that Diddy's like, well, if you don't remember it, then that's not a real freak off. Your freak off is when you remember it. So we'll have to do it again when you're more aware. And then we see the text messages where she's like, I want to do another freak off. And he's like, you name the date and the time and we'll make it happen. And I think, they completely annihilated Cassie's testimony and made it seem like she was a lot more complicit in the freak offs. Again, I understand the Stockholm syndrome arguments. I can see all of that. I see where her mom came in and testified and had to wire him $20,000 and had to take out a loan because he was threatening to release videos of her. That to me is a form of extortion. Absolutely. This week we saw the hotel staffer come out and he said that Diddy paid him $50,000 to conceal the tape and hand it over to Diddy. Now, the red flags that I saw in that testimony, and I talked about this on my other podcast, The Pop Report, the red flag I saw was that it was the hotel that asked Diddy for money. Diddy didn't threaten them and Diddy didn't offer up money first. The hotel said, we'll delete it, but you have to give us $50,000. And then Diddy agreed to the transaction. He said, okay, you bring me the files, let me know that it's been deleted from the server. And he even threw in an extra 50,000. So, and then not only that, but that same hotel staffer, I think that then reached out to Diddy again years later, asking for a job. He ultimately was ghosted, but it just, to me, it's the people that are involved in all of this seem like they have some level of complicity rather than it seems like Diddy was just out here bribing everybody and, throwing men into trunks and dumping them into the ocean.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of ways in which this trial has, for lack of a better word, disappointed me and maybe disappointed others
Yeah.
like you and the public. I think, first of all, this thing was way, way overhyped by the media and by social media and by, frankly,
Yeah.
some people in our audience. This thing was way overhyped. We were expecting to see evidence of pedo stuff, druggings against people's will, surveillance of people and celebrities. All these tapes that he has. He's taped all these people having sex without their knowledge. We were expecting to see some incredibly gangster type behavior and Epstein type behavior and so forth.
Yeah.
And when what it's really boiling down to is that we've got a sort of a classic case of battery and domestic violence, and also someone who had a lot of money, enough money and clout to create the kind of lifestyle he wanted, which apparently is lots of sex and lots of drugs, along with also, lots of hard work and stuff. I mean, the man, you don't get to be a billionaire without working really hard, right? But my point is, even with the Justin Bieber thing, no offense to the person in the chat, I guess, but for you to make this claim that you know that Diddy ruined Bieber, we have no. I'm so tired of the Bieber thing.
Yeah.
You're not doing Bieber any favors. No offense to this person, but you're not doing Bieber any favors by labeling him as a sexual assault victim when there's no evidence of it at all. People point to that one stupid, what was it, MTV interview where Diddy's sitting next to Bieber and he's like, "Don't tell him what we get up to" or something. It was a
Yeah.
fucking joke. People are uncomfortable. There's all kinds of banter on those programs. And so the problem is that people on social media set up all these expectations that we were going to hear about this house of horrors in this trial, when really, when it comes down to is, this really just should have been a domestic violence,
Yeah.
battery assault case, and
Yeah.
maybe throw in, I mean, even the arson
Some
thing was
possession
overplayed.
charges. Yeah.
We were told that Kid Cudi's car got blown up when really there was a little bit of burn damage to one of the seats and the hood. And I'm not justifying all this. This is, yeah, it's
This
gangster
is,
rapper
yeah.
behavior, but we kind of all knew this, didn't we? I keep
Yeah.
going back to this. When I was a Southern Baptist virgin who didn't drink or smoke, and I was about as naive as you could be when I was a teenager, if you had said to me, "What do you think goes on at Puff Daddy's house?" I would have said drugs, sex, orgies, guns, gangster behavior. If I knew that, then I guarantee fucking to you that any woman or any person who entered into his orbit knew that. And so now, decades after the fact, or in Cassie's case, I guess several years after the fact, when she needs money, then she files a lawsuit. I'll tell you something else. Cassie did not want to testify. I know there's no way in hell that Cassie wanted all of this gross stuff about herself and her to come out, that she was stringing her husband along while she's having sex with Diddy and this and that. This trial made Cassie look horrible. And so I know she didn't want to testify. And I guarantee you what happened was these stupid feds do what they always do. They threatened her and they said, "Ma'am, you are a co-conspirator because actually you were doing as much of the
Yeah.
work of ringleading these freak offs as Puff Daddy or Diddy or Sean Combs was. Ma'am, you are a co-conspirator and we are going to charge you for the same things that we're going after Diddy for unless you testify against him, turn Fed witness, and you'll get immunity." I guarantee you, I'd bet my life that's what happened. So we have a woman,
Yeah.
a pregnant woman who was at the very end of her pregnancy, who was forced right before giving birth to go through this traumatic testimony and have her darkest secrets exposed to the world because the feds wanted to get another RICO feather in their cap. No, thank you.
I mean, listen, because I see this woman, Brigitte Valentine, in the live chat, and she's like, "It's not about that. It's not about DV. It's not about that." Well, first of all, it sounds like you don't care about women if you don't care about the DV part of it. But I agree with you that, like, if this were a case of DV, if this were a case and there were possession charges, like, to me, there's very clear evidence that that was there. But what we heard was he had tapes on people and he was bribing people, and that there was this criminal enterprise that he was running. Okay. See, even Lillian's like, "Why is she reducing this to DV and battery as a gangster rap behavior?" It's not
No,
like
I'm not talking about the DV and
yeah,
battery. I said DV, battery, and
yeah,
gangster rapper behavior. The gangster rapper behavior is the stuff like the Molotov cocktail. He finds out his
yeah,
girlfriend has been screwing this other guy, and he gets mad and he does something gangster, and he does the Molotov in the car. I'm talking about the drugs. I'm talking about the guns. I'm talking about the other things that keep getting brought up, and so. And I'm not saying the government can't go after him for these things, but why is it just now? I'm just saying that we've known for
yeah.
20 fucking years that this was this lifestyle this guy was
Well,
living.
not only that, but we also heard that, like, the fires in LA, like, that was another conspiracy theory. The fires in LA were to burn down evidence of Diddy. Like, we heard so many things that
The
I think we were
conspiracy theory is out of
expecting.
control. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we expected there to be, because I think you and I like to look at things objectively and we like to let the evidence dictate where we go. I don't think we're driven by the headlines. I think we like to read deeper behind the headlines and read the footnotes at the bottom of the articles that give you the real truth. Um, and unfortunately, again, from what we've seen, I don't think that they have been able to prove that there was a criminal enterprise that he was running. Because again, like, the best they have on bribery, I mean, I get it. There are some points that I think the prosecution landed. I think Cassie's mom having to take out a loan and wire him $20,000
He didn't
because he was
testify to
threatening.
that, though, by the way. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm just saying that there's been a lot of stuff too in this
Yeah,
trial where people are sort of secondhand saying this or that.
yeah,
Even the Mia witness. You had a woman who worked for Diddy this week testifying to she claimed he sexually assaulted her. She never brought that up before, even with her own lawyers apparently. But anyway, but she claims this and that, and then it turns out that just a year ago she was begging him for a job. Now, we can keep excusing that and we can say, well, when someone's a victim, they just act in irrational ways. That only goes so far. And I have known several women in my life who were victims of domestic violence. And yes, it was horrible and all of that. But these women were also, at the same time, they were some tough chicks who also took
Yeah.
responsibility for their lives in a lot of ways. And just to say that when someone is a victim of violence, that therefore everything that they do is now covered under the umbrella of you can't expect them to explain it, you can't expect it to make sense. I'm sorry. No, I can't expect that when we're going to put a man away for the rest of his life, then we need this thing pretty tightly sewn up. And I think that's the issue that you and I have, is not that we're saying that he's totally innocent or he's not a bad guy or an abuser, but that this case is not setting good precedents for the future. If this is
No.
what they're bringing as a RICO case, RICO was meant to get mafia guys. That's
Yeah.
a criminal enterprise, is when someone dedicates their lives to one scam after another. I just don't think
Yeah.
that Bad Boy Entertainment was a criminal enterprise. I think the guy, yes, at times would have employees do things for him, because at that level, none of these people do anything for themselves. They don't even grocery shop. So yeah, you're going to have people doing shit for you. But the government
Yeah.
is stretching, I think, is really reaching on this. And, one last thing I'll say, Zach, if he gets a life sentence, if Sean Combs gets a life sentence, then what I'm going to say is, well, that's just karma, because he did beat up women, he did
Yeah.
abuse women, he did bad things. And so whether or not it's technically, I think it's right according to the law, or it's good precedent, okay, this is karma. It's not that I don't want him to go to prison, but I just think that there's some really messed up stuff that's getting tucked into this package that people are just overlooking, because it's like, oh, I saw him, he's a wife
Yeah.
beater or he's a girlfriend beater, so just throw the book at him. That's not how it
Yeah.
works.
No, and the reason that I fight for this is because look at what happened with Bill Cosby. Look at what happened with Jussie Smollett. Look at what's happening with Harvey Weinstein. If you just throw the book at them and you don't do it by the law
Yep.
and you don't use evidence to put them away, it opens the door for them to be able to fight this case and get out of it down the line. And it sets a bad precedent. I'm not defending Jussie Smollett and Bill Cosby and Diddy and all these guys. I'm not defending any of them, because then people are like, why are you defending it? Let me be
Right.
very clear. If you hear us defending these, I will defend Justin Baldoni. I will
Right.
stand 10 toes down to defend Baldoni. I do not
Johnny
defend
Depp. Yep.
any of these men at all. And if that's what you're hearing, I'm sorry you have poor comprehension skills and it's not registering to you. But listen, we are not defending Diddy. But when you don't do things the right way, you give them, look at Bill Cosby's out because he was able to find a loophole. Jussie Smollett is out because he was able to find a loophole. Harvey Weinstein is using all of the loopholes that, because again, when you cut corners and you do a sloppy job, maybe you win in the moment, but it doesn't actually have the effect that you think it's going to have down the line.
Well, and also the problem is too, when we set, all of these cases are always setting precedents, right? And so when, especially a high profile case like this. So my question is, what happens when there's a defendant who is not a woman beater, but who really likes prostitutes and drugs a lot? Because that's mostly what they're going after him for. I know there's other stuff, and I know like the arson claims and whatever, but what happens when you have someone that actually is a decent person, but that has some taste and some vices and some appetites that are out of control? Can we put him away for life?
Yeah.
I also don't like Maureen Comey, but that's just a personal issue.
Lillian says she's not going to allow you to gaslight her and that you're just a commenter. You're not in law enforcement. I mean, I would imagine, Lillian, you're less than a commentator and you're definitely not in law enforcement.
Well,
But I don't think anybody here.
gaslighting implies that your brain is too weak to withstand my argument. So if you want to insult yourself that way, that's fine.
Yeah. So again, it's wild, but I know that this is kind of something that we face because we bring these uncomfortable truths that people don't want to hear. Diddy's a bad person and I can prosecute him
He's not
for all of
Baldoni.
his
Yeah.
misdeeds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
I can prosecute him for all of his misdeeds. But again, had they gone into this with the case of DV, had they gone into this with the case of substance,
battery. Yeah.
battery, possession charges, like all of those things, I think they have very clear evidence to put him away for. Now, do they have a strong case of racketeering? From what I've seen, no. The hard part about this case, too, is that we're not seeing this live streamed like we saw with Depp v. Heard, right?
Right.
We're only getting this through transcripts and through what the media is reporting on based off of the reporters that we have in the room and the information that they're putting out there. Inner City Press is, I think, a great resource because he's in the courtroom. He's giving us live updates as they become available. But again, like we have to, even the argument of it's not over. We're getting towards.
It
I
is
can see the
almost
finish
over,
line.
dude. It's
Yeah, I
okay,
can
that's
see the
another
finish
thing.
line.
The prosecution, people have been telling me it's not over for a while now, but the prosecution has declared that not only do they expect to finish this week, right? I
Is it
guess
this
next week.
week?
Well, they had said they
Next
had
week, yeah.
said, yeah, they had said June 2nd, the week of June, maybe the second week of June. So they're gonna finish at the latest next week. They even said that they might finish earlier because so my point is we're at the end. We are almost at the very end of the prosecution case. The other thing people need to keep in mind is there's a whole defense case that we haven't seen yet. And so all of the stuff that so far has poked holes in Cassie's story or in some of these different witnesses' stories, that's just come through cross-examination. What happens when the defense actually now has the floor, so to speak? Now, maybe we'll see that they don't really have much. And maybe, it turns out they're like, well, they didn't really have much other than what they brought on cross or whatever. But yeah, we are at the end of the prosecution's case. So I guess the last thing I would say is I might not have been so disappointed in the way that the Diddy trial has turned out, the Sean Combs trial has turned out, if we had not had people overselling this thing for months and months and months, as this guy was going to be it was going to be proved that he was doing pedo stuff and he was doing minor stuff and he was drugging and he was this and that and this and that. And so part of what you're seeing here is just people who are perplexed because we were told we were going to get so much more than this. And so, you kind of set people up to fail when that's what you're putting out there. All of you people
Yeah.
talking about Bieber and stuff. You set this thing up with no
And
evidence.
listen, and with Bieber, he's clearly traumatized by something. And whether it was Diddy or it wasn't Diddy, his team has already denied that. So it doesn't seem like he's going to own that, even if that is true. But he's clearly a troubled man and he's struggling with something. But adding all of this extra sauce on top of him is not helping him. So everybody that thinks that they're helping Bieber right now by associating him with Diddy, whether that's true or not.
Zach, can I ask you a question though? As someone who hasn't, maybe I've missed something. How do we absolutely know that Bieber is struggling? I know he looks thinner, and maybe he's taking too much Adderall, but he looks thinner, and we've seen him sort of high or stoned in a few videos, and then we saw him touching his wife's boobs. But with all due respect, what evidence do we have that he really is traumatized or struggling?
For me, it was the videos of him, and again, you can argue maybe he was just high on Instagram Live. We've all had our moments. I've definitely had too much wine and gone on Instagram Live. To me, the biggest red flag though was when he was on stage with SZA, and you can very clearly see that that was more than weed because he very clearly was out of it. And so somebody to me, and when I say he's troubled, I mean it could possibly just be substance abuse, right?
Okay,
Because again,
okay, that's all I'm trying to get at.
yeah, he had a troubled teenage years. Like he was going through, but a lot of
Most
Ariana Grande
child
had those.
stars, yeah, most of
Yeah,
them were trouble. Ariana
they
Grande
had
is anorexic apparently, or it looks like it. I mean, they
Yeah, and even when they were teenagers, remember she had the spitting on the donut at the donut shop. Like Diddy, or sorry, not Diddy. Bieber had a number of different scandals when he was a teenager, and the press was on him. That like I think just that pressure, he's wanted to stay away from the limelight. But to me, there's very clearly some form of substance abuse. To me, when people turn to drugs at that high level, it's typically, in my opinion, them trying to run or escape from something. Now that could be a number of things. We've seen a lot of footage of him on the red carpets not wanting to pose with his wife. He could just be unhappy in his marriage right now, and that's why he's turning to substances to get away. I don't know what it is, but he doesn't seem to be in the healthiest state of mind based off of the very obvious substance abuse that we've seen. And to me,
maybe
the
it's
biggest one.
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, to me, the biggest one was when he was on stage with SZA, and you can just see he was out of it. He was singing, and he wasn't singing into the microphone. He was kind of starting to do that fentanyl fold. And you can kind of see, like to me, that was a big red flag.
Do you think, to completely change the subject, but do you think that Elon Musk, was he in the K-hole at the White House in that video?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I've
That
never
video
been
that
in a
was going
K-hole, so
around.
I can't speak to it. But the only reason I know about the
Oh,
Fendi fold is
man.
because I live in downtown LA and I see it all the time on the streets.
Oh, man. Well, I'm not gonna claim that, that Bieber is the healthiest person or whatever, but it just seemed like there's a lot of leaps that people are going to from like, "Oh, he's definitely got major issues," to then, "Oh, it must be Diddy." It's like, y'all, you don't
Yeah.
know anything about any of these people's lives, but whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but
I
I
won't be
suppose the
crying
live
for
chat
I
is
won't
very
be
tiring.
crying for Sean Combs if he gets, as
No.
I expect he's gonna get life in prison, because the feds generally get their man, but, I won't be crying for him. I'll say, that's karma, whatever, and we certainly have seen that he's done a lot of bad shit, but as far as precedent, this case, and also as far as it not meeting the expectations that have been ginned up over months and months, I definitely think that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I will just say, as a consumer of news, I was disappointed in the revelations that came out in court because to me they weren't that juicy. To me, it just kind of sounds like he's kinky, he was having a lot of orgies, he was paying people that weren't supposed to be doing things, and
Yep.
it is what it is. Like but the criminal enterprise, the RICO of it all, I still just have not, unfortunately, seen. You know, I think Sarah makes a good point. Many people on the internet don't understand the elements the prosecution has to prove for racketeering and RICO. They've proved many of the elements, and the trial is not over. I think they've made points, but I don't know if I could confidently
So
say
there's
that I
a
think that
there's a
they've proved
great
a lot of the
degree.
elements.
Yeah, there's some debate on this because I've certainly seen lawyers. I mean, I went on Nate the lawyer's show and I had two lawyers, tell me why I was wrong. So I'm certainly not I'm not averse to being schooled in an opposite position. But I've had some lawyers tell me that what you've just said, Sarah, that they have approved various aspects of the RICO statute. I've had other lawyers tell me no, they haven't. I will say this, it may be too that they end up proving what is necessary for the law or for the sentence, but that it's not just. And let me just say something that, your audience doesn't know because I've not talked about this on your show much, what like I have on mine, but I have had serious long-standing issues with RICO going back years. And so and so is it possible that they have proved what they need to for these charges? It is possible, but I also am not sure that that is still just. And I think that again, these laws were created because they were looking for a way to get hardcore mafia guys who were feeding criminality into the
Yeah.
community every single day. They were looking for a way to get them off the streets. And I just think that this has turned into a misapplication of the law. But, then again, I also have problems with the Nexium verdict. I thought that guy was a sleazebag, and I thought that he certainly did a lot of shitty things. But I also thought that a life sentence for for running a cult was problematic. So it may just be that I have a more liberal view of these things than perhaps your audience or perhaps even some attorneys. But I do think that the law has been misapplied and overly applied. All right.
Uh, yeah. Paula says she just ordered her Never with Teeth shirt. Yeah, I have mine on right here. Inspired by Blake Lively's yummy text messages to Justin Baldoni. Lots that we got into. I don't think Daniel Fruzen's going to be able to join us today. Maybe he'll be able to pop in tomorrow. But we will see. But at least until then, I'm
Thank you for
going
having
to
me
be
on.
seeing you in
In a
Dallas.
month.
We're kicking things off. Dallas, or July 11th. Colonel Kurtz is going to be on stage with me in Dallas, Texas. We have this activated tour that kicks off, so we get to start this all together. I'm excited. Dallas is going to be fun. I'm coming to Dallas, Phoenix, Philly, Toronto, Brooklyn, Chicago, Seattle, Los Angeles. Guys, get your tickets now at nofilterlive.com. Colonel Kurtz will be with me in Dallas,
Zach,
July
do
11th.
do you think that Blake will show up to protest me like I did her?
I sure hope so. And I hope her shirt says Colonel Kurtz is a Diddy apologist.
That'll be perfect. That'll be perfect. No, I look forward to it. It's going to be fun. I hope people can show up.
It's going to be a good time. We're going to have fun. We're going to get to meet all of you guys. We're going to get to hang out and dive into whatever mess continues to unfold over these next 4 weeks or 5 weeks. Because I mean, at this point, it's like every time I'm like, okay, this case has to be dying down. Something new picks up. Do you think that we'll have a settlement soon?
I don't think she has, I don't think Blake has suffered enough, to be honest with you. I think that, and what I mean by that is I think that I don't think that she's ready to throw in the towel. And so I think for a normal person, we could expect a settlement soon. And certainly when you look at the statistics on settlements, I mean, that is still the overwhelming likelihood in this case. But this woman, I mean, she's told people that she sees herself as a Me Too crusader. And her lawyer, she's got people writing amicus briefs for her. You know, her supporters are out there saying this woman is the figurehead for the Me Too movement, so to speak. And and the judge is making precedent here and all this. I find it hard to believe she's going to step away from that. But she should. She should.
I agree. I don't think this is gonna end well for her, and unfortunately, I just think it's only gonna get worse from here. I mean, and again, like, I don't understand the people that are defending Blake, and they're just like, "Well, we haven't seen everything," but I'm just like, but with everything that we've seen so far, starting from the Van Zandt lawsuit and the sham subpoena to Stephanie Jones, starting from that, then dropping the lawsuit, leaking to the New York Times, filing a CRD complaint, and then not suing in California, but suing in New York, not having SAG investigate, not having the CRD investigate. Like, she literally asked the California Civil Rights Department to not investigate this. Like, she waived an investigation and decided to sue in a completely different state. Like, to me, all of this just doesn't make any sense. And it's just, I don't know. Like, and since then, we've seen a number of things. She doesn't want to turn over evidence. She's dropping her claims. Like, I agree with Piers Morgan when he says that, this is making her look like a laughing stock more than anything.
Agreed.
We'll see what happens. All right. Thank you, Kristen. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
go check out Colonel Kurtz on YouTube. You're going to be doing a deeper dive into your amicus
Oh,
brief,
I am.
right?
I am. Yeah. And I'm Colonel Kurtz 99 everywhere. So just on all platforms, you can find me there. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
It's also going to be linked in the description below, so you can go and follow, support, subscribe, do all the things. And I will see you in Dallas.
All right. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right, guys, just a reminder, get your merch now. You can head on over to nofiltermerch.com. Nofiltermerch.com. Stock up on all of the yummy t-shirts. We have Never With Teeth. We have Zack Peters, My Lawyer. Do I look like I just fell out of a coconut tree? Justice for Justin. We also have the classics, the Zack Pack hoodie, the Zack Pack t-shirt, and the Zactivated tank top. You can get all of the merch now until June 15th. I will be donating 50% of the proceeds that come in. 50% of my proceeds will go to Home Life Community to help support individuals on the autism spectrum like my brother Ethan. So go on, get your merch. Also, get your tickets to the Zactivated tour. It's coming fast. We're almost there. We're kicking it off. I'm going to be in Dallas with Colonel Kurtz. I also have Hannah and Hagen from Vanderpump Villa. That's Dallas, July 11th. Phoenix, I have Andy from Popcorn Planet on July 13th. In Philly, I have the Brav Bros. I have Giorgio Says. And I have a housewife that will be joining us on stage too for July 23rd. In Toronto, I have Paula M. and the Sidley twins. So, July 24th in Toronto, we're going to be spilling lots of royal tea. We're going to have lots of tea to spill in Toronto. Brooklyn, July 26th. I'm going to have Donna Bowling, Chef Stu, and other fun guests that'll be on stage with us. That's July 26th in Brooklyn, New York. Chicago, July 27th. With Donna Bowling, Chef Stu, and Jenny McCarthy is going to be in that show. August 8th, I'm going to be in Seattle with the Sidley twins. And August 10th, I'm going to be in Los Angeles. I have Louis Levanti, Andy Lawani, Christy Cook from Spill Sesh, and Chloe Veach. Netflix's Chloe Veach is going to be on stage with me too, August 10th. So go to nofilterlive.com. Get your tickets, get your merch, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Love you. Appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Give me a follow at Just Plain Zack. Follow the podcast at No Filter with Zack. And I will talk to you later.